You're watching What She Said on YouTube.
Hello there, I'm Christine Bentley in studio with Kate Wheeler, and we are joined by Bill Bogart, known as an international expert on reducing the harm of risky behavior. Welcome, Bill.
Well, thank you. Good morning. Thanks for having me on.
Oh. Now, today we're talking about Ontario reintroducing the Healthy Menus Choices Act that is going to mandate caloric labeling. So what does this mean for stores and restaurants, for example?
Any store or restaurant or other establishment with over 20 outlets will be required to post the calorie count of various food and beverage items, including alcohol. So the idea is that people will then know the caloric content of what they're consuming and hopefully make healthy and wise choices.
Now, hang on. It says reintroducing. Did we have this once before?
The bill was introduced last February, and then, of course, the election was called, and so it was never passed. So it's now being reintroduced in the expectation that it will be passed and come into law.
Is there a similar bill that is in effect anywhere else in this country, or are we the first?
I believe in Canada we would be the first. It certainly has been tried in the United States fairly extensively in various states and cities, most prominently New York. And it will be extensively extended under the Affordable Patients Act, known familiarly as Obamacare. And that's going to come into effect in about a year or so, and that will regulate nationally various chains and restaurants. Small individual establishments will not be affected.
Well, presumably the aim is to reduce the risk of obesity and promote a healthier lifestyle. Will it do the trick, do you think?
Well, it may promote a healthier lifestyle. There actually have been a number of studies done, particularly on the New York experiment. And I would say the results overall have been disappointing from the perspective of people actually using the posting of calories to impact their food choices. Most people just ignore it. Those who do it tend to have been quite conscious of healthy choices in any event. There's some evidence that if the healthier food choices are more prominently displayed, that tends to have people select the lower calorie option to some extent. But I mean, to date, you couldn't say this legislation has had an incredible impact, and you know there are all sorts of questions that remain. I mean, even if people make the lower calorie choice at point of purchase, you really don't know what they're doing for the rest of the day.
Right, and also you don't know whether it may be the lower calorie option, but is it the healthier option?
A very good question. I actually did a hot post on all of this last week, and this is one of the points that I make. You know, just because you have a Diet Coke, that's the lower calorie option. Apple juice has more calories, but it's the more nutritious choice. So there's really complexities here. I mean, some people talk about this. Well, this is going to be a real education tool, but you know, the evidence to date is that it really has not been much of an education tool. Now, however, I want to say something on behalf of the legislation. It's part of something called the Healthy Kids Strategy that was a set of recommendations from a panel set up by the Liberal government about 2 years ago. And I think as part of the overall strategy, we could see some progress, because the strategy itself has some really good stuff in it in terms of support for young children and mothers, in terms of good nutrition, more fruits and vegetables for northern communities, more exercise for kids in school, more community exercise programs, etc. And if all of that were implemented and properly resourced, I think we could see some progress. The point that I make in the Huffington Post is a comparison with smoking. I mean, 50 years ago, almost 50% of the adult population smoked, and now we're down to about 18%. It's still too high, but we've made very, very significant progress. But there was no one thing that we did that brought it down. We did a variety of interventions. We restricted advertising. We required graphic warnings. We prohibited sales to children. We prohibited smoking in public places. We taxed highly cigarettes. And what we also did is we saw a real sea change in attitude towards smoking.
Yeah, well, I was just going to ask you about that. The whole attitude about smoking was, it was shaming to some degree.
Yes.
For a good cause.
Yes.
But basically, that secondhand smoke was going to affect everyone.
Yes.
Affect the people in a restaurant, affect the people on a plane, affect your children. But how do you do that with, for example, obesity,
Yeah.
where we're now preaching basically that about self-esteem and that body image, people should be happy and feel beautiful regardless. They should, it's a little hard to shame people. It's not socially acceptable to shame people for being overweight. So how do you think that's going to play
Yeah,
out?
and you know what? That's a great question, and I think, in fact, we almost have to do the opposite thing with obesity than we did with smoking. That is to say that we did use shame and stigma, and that came about because there was this real shift in public attitudes towards smoking.
Mm-hmm.
That most of us, it went from a glamorous, sophisticated activity to a filthy, expensive habit. With obesity, I do think we have to back off shaming overweight people. We make their lives very, very difficult, and I think that makes the situation worse. I am one that thinks that we should be much more accepting of a variety of body shapes, particularly in terms of women. I think women have borne the brunt of this. But the other component is an acceptance that we then all have to eat healthier and we have to get more physical exercise. So I think those things, oddly enough, can go hand in hand. On the one hand, we sort of back off being so very judgmental about deviant bodies, as somebody once called them. But at the same time, everybody signs up. Everybody signs up for more nutritious eating, drinking, and more physical exercise. So, to come back to the matter at hand, I don't think mandatory caloric labeling is going to get us anywhere near where we want to go. So in and of itself, I'm not a big fan. The overall package in terms of healthy kids strategy, I really think has great potential. We'll have to implement it. It'll have to be properly resourced by the government. We'll have to do a lot of impact studies to see where we are making progress, but I do think there's potential there.
So what exactly is going to be on the caloric labeling? Because depending on what diet you're following, whether you're doing Weight Watchers, you might be looking for points, you might be cutting carbs, you might be wanting to lose your sugar. So salt might be of concern to you.
Yes.
So
yes.
what is actually going to be on that label? Because it's a lot of information that different people might need.
No, well, and the legislation empowers the bureaucrats and others to make regulations. So these are the specifics. So we don't know exactly the information that's being given. Certainly, the thrust of it is about calories. And again, you're making a very good point, which I also made in the HuffPost last week, which is this distinction between calories and nutrition. Just because something has less calories in it doesn't mean it's better for you. You got to know what the overall ingredients are. And that's why there's something called front of package labeling, that there's sort of a movement in the United States by health people to, and this wouldn't apply in restaurants, but would certainly apply to stuff in grocery stores. The what is in the food, the contents of it would be much more prominently displayed, not only in terms of calories, but in terms of ingredients like salt, sugar, and fat.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm, again, a big fan of moving in that direction. Again, we'd have to see how effective it is on the ground. We'd have to monitor, but I think we can make some progress there. But you're making an excellent point about the distinction between nutrition and calories.
Right.
I think we're very obsessed in this culture about calories, and what we should be focused on much more is health and how to get healthy.
Right.
Yeah, because they can have a whole lot of calories in an avocado and a square of dark chocolate, but
They're
you'd
not
be
the
all
same.
good. They're
Yeah.
not the same as eating the same number of
Exactly.
calories in a bowl of Frosted Flakes.
But at least it's a start. And I know some retailers, some chains have already voluntarily,
Yeah.
or maybe they don't display it. I know, for example, in the U.S., I think Starbucks displays it. In Canada, you can ask for it. If there's something you want to, you want to buy.
You'd never have a double pumpkin latte, whatever it is you have there again, if you looked at the.
Yeah.
Well, and
But-
that's why the advocates say there is something to
Yeah.
this.
Yes,
related
but
to
they
that.
do. But they have responded to consumers saying we want to know, and apparently it's displayed in certain parts.
Oh yeah.
And they have it, and
Oh,
you
yeah.
can ask for it.
Yeah,
So-
no, we're not passive actors in this, right? I mean, we are consumers, and the movement can grow. I mean, the sale of soft drinks is falling, the sale of sugary cereals is falling. We have the whole Pepsi companies trying to position itself as a health food situation has just fallen flat. We've now got these small chains of fast foods like Mexican Chipotle Grill that pride itself in delivering nutritious meals at price points that are competitive with other fast food chains. And last quarter, Mexican Chipotle Grill stock was up 26%. Why is that? Because people are going to Mexican Chipotle Grill. So, I do think consumers can push back, and that's really part of what's got to happen in terms of the shift of attitudes and action.
I think one of the places that consumers could start pushing back right away is what you and I were talking about. Supermarket shelves should not be marketing to kids. With candy bars right at the outlet,
Right, yes.
and the sugary bad cereal right at eye level.
Marketing
for kids.
to children is a very serious issue. Quebec has actually banned now for 2 decades
For
marketing to children.
the candy right at the checkout where you have no choice.
Yeah,
and,
yeah,
and it's sort
yeah,
of,
yeah.
they're quite happy to
Yeah,
have, they
yeah,
don't mind,
yeah.
they know you're not going to let
Yeah,
them have a temper
yeah.
tantrum.
Yeah, and without sounding like a Liberal government spokesman, because I have nothing to do with the Liberal government, there's actually a component in the Healthy Kids strategy to tackle marketing to children.
That's great. So, Bill, you have to come back and tell us more about that when it comes in.
Well, thank you. I'd love to.
Bill Bogart, thank you.
Click the channel subscribe button for full-length interviews and more from What She Said here on YouTube.